US President Donald Trump says there is a good chance of a peace deal to end the Russia-Ukraine war, the grinding Russia-Ukraine war that viewers after US and Ukrainian officials met in South Florida on Sunday. Now, he also added that corruption in Ukraine is not helpful, pointing to the recent resignation of top Zelensky aide Andriy Yermak after an anti-corruption raid at his home in Kyiv. Now, Trump also says he's been briefed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who both described the talks as being productive. Meanwhile, Rubio has also said that more work is needed and that any agreement must involve Russia directly. Meanwhile, Witkoff is now set to travel there Monday for expected talks with President Vladimir Putin. Meanwhile, here's Trump and Rubio for you.
Said that Ukraine has a little bit of problems.
Well, we have a corruption situation going on, which is not helpful.
And is that impeding the peace talks?
I said it was going on for 3 years, right? Didn't I say it? 3 years I said it. So I was way ahead of schedule. But I think that there's a good chance we can make a deal.
I think we built on that again today, but there's more work to be done. This is delicate, it's complicated, there are a lot of moving parts, and obviously there's another party involved here that'll have to be a part of the equation, and that'll continue later this week when Mr. Witkoff travels to Moscow, although we've also been in touch in varying degrees with the Russian side, but we have a pretty good understanding of their views as well. So much work remains, but today was again a very productive and useful session.
Viewers, India's ties with Russia are expanding, and they're expanding fast. They've been driven by record trade, rising energy imports, and deeper cooperation across defense, nuclear power, and new transport corridors. Let's meanwhile take a look at how both countries are pushing towards a $100 billion partnership despite growing geopolitical pressure.
India's trade with Russia is at its highest ever, nearly 12 times what it was a decade ago. Fueled largely by India's purchases of discounted Russian crude. At the same time, Indian companies are pushing deeper into Russia's market with pharmaceuticals, machinery, food products, and IT services. Oil remains the biggest pillar. November imports hit a 5-month high even as Washington tightened sanctions on Russian producers.
We are not the biggest purchasers of Russian oil, that is China. We are not the biggest purchasers of Russian LNG. We are a country where actually the Americans said for the last few years that we should do everything to stabilize the world energy markets, including buying oil from Russia. Incidentally, we also buy oil from America, and that amount has been increasing.
Both sides now aim for $100 billion by 2030. Key to that target, new connectivity. The international north-south transport corridor is increasingly moving cargo at scale. And the planned Chennai-Vladivostok Sea Link aims to connect India's east coast directly to Russia's far east. Civil nuclear cooperation remains strong. Rosatom continues supplying fuel and technology for projects like the Kudankulam plant, a partnership Russia says India chose when other countries hesitated. Defense ties, despite India's diversification push, remain central. From submarines to air defense systems, Russian equipment still forms a large part of India's arsenal. Joint drills and upgrades to the Su-30 fleet keep the partnership active. India and Russia are also in talks to finalize a major deal for 5 more S-400 regiments, which would bring India's total to 10, one of its biggest long-range air defense deployments. From crude to nuclear fuel, from defense hardware to new transport corridors, the India-Russia economic story remains broad and resilient. And despite geopolitical pressure, both sides appear determined to deepen a relationship shaped by long-term strategic interests. Bureau Report for NDTV World.
We now shift our focus to Israel, viewers, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has formally requested a pardon in his ongoing corruption trial. In a letter to President Isaac Herzog, Netanyahu said the case has become a source of national division. Furthermore, he argued that while he wants to prove his innocence, the public interest now supports ending the trial. My colleague Dishha Bagchi shared this report from Ground Zero, Tel Aviv.
I'm Dishha Bagchi reporting from Tel Aviv on a day when Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has requested President Herzog to pardon him in the various corruption charges that he has been facing for the last 6 years. To give some context, these corruption charges include Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu being accused of taking bribes from billionaires for political favors, as well as paying and negotiating with Israeli media outlets for more favorable coverage of himself as well as his wife. So now, after US President Trump also made a similar request when he was in Israel last month, now Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu himself has also requested President Herzog, who's the only person in Israel who can in fact pardon people for criminal charges. Now Benjamin Netanyahu has requested President to pardon him in these corruption charges, saying that having to testify in court 3 times a week has been interfering with governance, and that all the evidence that was compiled against him in this case has been falling apart. This is what he claims. So now he's saying that he must be pardoned because he must focus on leading Israel and focus on the war effort against Hamas. So now whether the President Herzog will in fact pardon him is yet to be seen.
Stay with the region, where the US military said on Sunday that it recently destroyed 15 sites containing Islamic State weapon caches in southern Syria. According to the US Central Command, or US CENTCOM as it's called, American and Syrian forces identified and destroyed the storage facilities during multiple airstrikes conducted between the 24th of November and the 27th of November. Now, this comes after US President Donald Trump vowed to do everything he could to make Syria successful after the November 10 talks with Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara. Shift our focus to Asia, viewers, where the death toll in the Hong Kong apartment complex blaze rose to at least 146 on Sunday, as investigators discovered more bodies in the burnt-out buildings. A steady stream of people placed bouquets of flowers at an ever-growing makeshift memorial at the scene of the disaster, among the worst in the city's history, in fact. The Hong Kong Police Disaster Victim Identification Unit has been going through the buildings of the Wang Fuk Court complex. It has found bodies both in the apartment units and on the roofs. We get you more.
經過火災之後，好多樓宇、好多地方都係昏黑晒嘅，成屋漆黑，現場冇電力，冇正常嘅照明，現場嘅工作環境相當惡劣。即使喺日間有少少陽光嘅情況之下，由窗口進入嘅光線係已經唔足夠嘅。如果唔近窗口嘅地方，或者喺屋入面嘅角落嘅位置，光線更加不足，影響我哋嘅搜救嘅進度。
Oh, in the US, 4 people were killed and 10 others wounded on Sunday in a shooting during a family gathering at a bouquet hall in a banquet hall in Stockton. Now, the victims included both children and adults. According to a spokesperson for the San Joaquin County Sheriff's Office, this may have been a targeted incident. The suspected shooter has not yet been caught. Meanwhile, detectives are still working to identify a possible motive. We get you the latest.
It was not something where the rest of the public has to fear. This wasn't some terrorist type attack where they walked in and just wanted to kill people. So we're not gonna say whether it's gang related or not until we have all the facts in front of us.
A court in Bangladesh's capital Dhaka on Monday sentenced ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to 5 years in prison and her niece, British Labour Party lawmaker Tulip Siddiq, to 2 years in prison as well. Now, the duo was sentenced for corruption involving a government land project. According to Dhaka's court and the prosecutors, Hasina misused her powers as Prime Minister, while Siddiq corruptly influenced her aunt to help her mother get a piece of this land. Bangladesh's former Prime Minister Khaleda Zia remains in very critical condition at a Dhaka hospital, her party said on Sunday. A self-exiled son and acting party chief Tariqur Rahman signalled uncertainty over his return. Senior party officials have said that the 80-year-old Khaleda, who is the leader of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party or the BNP, was admitted to a private hospital on the 23rd of November with a severe chest infection affecting her heart and lungs as well. Over in Latin America, Venezuela's National Assembly is set to form a special commission to investigate US President Donald Trump's deadly strikes on suspected drug trafficker boats off the Venezuelan coast. Now, this investigation, viewers, will look into a Washington Post report which said that the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ordered all people aboard one of the boats killed during a strike in September. Now, the report also adds that the second strike was carried to kill 2 survivors. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has dismissed US President Donald Trump's threat to exclude Pretoria from next year's G20 summit, reaffirming South Africa's status as a founding member of the group. Washington boycotted the Group of 20 Leaders summit held under South Africa's presidency in Johannesburg on the 22nd and the 23rd of November, with Trump repeating allegations widely discredited that the host country's black majority government persecutes its white minority. Pope Leo XIV landed in Lebanon on Sunday, aiming to bring a message of hope to its long-suffering people and to bolster a crucial Christian community in the Middle East. Now, the Pope is fulfilling a promise of his predecessor, Pope Francis, who had in fact wanted to visit years but was unable to as his health had worsened. Now, at the Beirut airport, his plane landed with a Lebanese military jet escort. The Pope was greeted first by President Joseph Aoun, then by Parliament Speaker Nabi Berri and Prime Minister Nawaf Salam. North Korea staged a big show for its Air Force on Saturday with leader or Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un and his daughter taking part. State media said it was the 80th anniversary of the Air Force and broadcast a long video on Sunday, one day after this event took place. Now, viewers, it is common for North Korean media to report news a day or more after it happens. The video showed some of North Korea's Soviet-era jets as well as new drones, and also an advanced warning intelligence gathering plane, which have been seen before in North Korean state media. Lithuania's Vilnius airport said on Sunday it had temporarily halted operations due to suspected balloons in its airspace. Now, the closure, viewers, comes in a series of flight disruptions in the Baltic nation. European aviation, meanwhile, has repeatedly been thrown into chaos in recent months by drone sightings and incursions alike. Now, this chaos was also witnessed in Copenhagen and Brussels. The Vilnius airport has been closed at least 10 times since early October this year. South Korean court has started hearing the trial of the leader of the Unification Church, Han Hak-cha, who is accused of bribing former First Lady Kim Kyon-hee with luxury items, including Chanel handbags and a diamond necklace. Now, the corruption case is part of a string of investigations by special prosecutors into ousted President Yoon Suk-yeol and his wife Kim in the wake of Yoon's martial law order in December 2024. Viewers, according to a study released on Monday by a leading conflict think tank, revenues at China's giant military firms fell last year as corruption purges slows arms contracts. That's correct. The Chinese decline contrasts sharply with growing revenue growth globally for big arms and military services alike. Well, these are being fueled by wars in Ukraine and Gaza. Needless to say, the People's Liberation Army was one of the main targets of a broader corruption crackdown ordered by President Xi back in 2012, reaching the upper echelons of the military in 2023 when its rocket force was targeted and its head was in fact unceremoniously removed. Switzerland on Sunday overwhelmingly rejected a proposed 50% tax on inheritance fortunes of 50 million Swiss francs, with 78% of the votes against this proposed plan. Now, the outcome even exceeded the two-thirds opposition indicated in polls. Bankers highlighted it as a litmus test of appetite for wealth redistribution in Switzerland. Now, this comes as other countries such as Norway have already beefed up their wealth tax or debated similar moves.